Anime, and I'm speaking to Zuza Gonçalves. What's your government name? I always forget.
It's Julius Caesar. Government name? You mean like my full proper name?
Uh-huh.
Is that it?
Uh-huh.
It's Julius Caesar Ferreira Batista Gonçalves.
All right.
Gonçalves.
Cool. It's a nice long name.
Yeah.
Proper Brazilian name. Julius Caesar. That's great.
Yeah.
Where did Zuza come from?
I don't know exactly. It's a child nickname that, uh, and there was also the story is my brother couldn't say my name properly, Julius, and then there was this character also on TV that was the old Souza. It was like this old guy in Bahia, old black guy who said lots of wise things. That was the character, and I enjoyed him, so I liked being called Zuza.
Huh.
But it stopped when I stopped using it when I was like teenage. No one, only like distant uncles and aunts would call me Zuza. And then in 2013, I decided to make that my like artist name.
Huh. And that happens to be the year I met you. So I've
Yeah,
only ever known you as Zuza. That's amazing that have.
yeah. And actually, the first time I went to Omega, I was Julius, and people called me Julius. And when I got back, and I was Zuza, and then some people that had been there in 2012, they were like, "Hold on, why is it Zuza? Wasn't it Julius? What's going on?" And some people got lost.
Was there any one specific thing that served as a catalyst for you wanting to reclaim Zuza as like part of your artistic identity?
Yeah, totally.
Mm.
Uh, I was working with like choirs in a more traditional way, and it was the only way I knew.
Hmm.
And and then I started teaching a class with an actress, great friend of mine, and it was like she would do body work for voice and like group work, like from theater,
Hmm.
and I would get these voices and and we would make music with that openness and with that voice that had been warmed up like in a theater manner, and we would make music with that, and then naturally the choir path didn't make sense there.
Hmm.
So because people were massaging each other and rolling on the ground and making all sorts of different sounds and connecting and you know in a very deep relationship to each other like theater tends to bring,
Hmm.
and then it's my time to make music with them. So I started to come up with ways to make music together uh, that could converse, have a dialogue with what my friend was doing, and that I've always improvised. When I was a singer in like the rock and roll bands and blue bands, I always improvised. Like there were songs that I didn't know the lyrics. I always made them up. Like songs that I wrote that didn't have whole lyrics, so I would always have to make them up on the spot, and it was natural. And also playing the harmonica, and it was improvisation was natural, but it it had not yet been introduced into this vocal music setting. So I think that was an important kickoff for that. This work with this friend, and then I started doing some things with this group, And then I started investigating with myself some improv stuff, and I would record my voice over and over with singing layers, and then I would try that with the group, and
this creative expansion was happening in 2012?
No, that was way before that. That was
okay.
That was 2007. Yeah, I think 2007.
Okay.
And before that, I had been working both with choirs and also with children. And with children, there was also a lot of improvisation. It was a much more open-minded setting for music making. So I always also had the strong influence with contemporary arts education for children and teenagers. And at the same time, I was doing proper choral music, with more artistic, with more professional groups. And so I was in these two worlds at the same time. So I always wanted to join these two worlds, and I was always searching for that. That was since 2002, 3. I was already thinking about that. But when I met this friend, when me and this friend started working together, I had the space to actually put it to use with people.
And what is this friend's name?
Her name is Paula Cajara. She's now in Europe and in Italy. She's gonna do some work over there. Maybe we're gonna do some work over there together. And her research is voice in theater, and that's where when I started to record some improvisations, things that I would do with myself. And then I felt like sharing it because it was very strong for me. So I started posting it. But for me to post it I decided to post it as with an alternate. Do you use the alternate?
Oh, like a pseudonym?
Yeah, like a pseudonym. So instead of Julius Gonçalves, I started the blog as Zuza Gonçalves. And a few years later, I started working with some teenagers, and I decided to change my name to Zuza, and I started with them. And they bought it at the same time. Everyone started calling me Zuza at that place I worked. Then I changed it on Facebook. Then, and it became
took on
Zuza.
A life of its own.
Yeah, because Julius Gonçalves, for me, was very formal. And as a choir director, it kind of made sense. But when I figured out that wasn't the direction I was going, and traditional choral music, I felt that Zuza Gonçalves was much more connected. So I changed it. It was a very brave thing for me at the time. I saw myself as a professional, as a musician, but not as much as an artist. And so it was a difficult thing for me to change the name. But everything started happening after that. Everything changed and everything started happening.
Yeah, it's amazing the power of a word. What that can speak into existence, just by changing your name, or changing your orientation to a name that was there from before.
Totally.
You mentioned another aspect of your identity, seeing yourself as a professional musician, but not necessarily an artist. What was the distinction that you were making between the two, and do you still, believe in that distinction, or how your thinking sort of evolved in thinking about the identity of the artist and the identity of the musician or the professional musician?
Personally, when I became a musician, I have no musicians in my family. So yeah, but you know, my parents taught me I could do anything I wanted. Like I could be anything I wanted, and I believed them. So, but there were no musicians in my family, and I felt this pressure of like, you know, doing something with my life, something important. You know, I always had that feeling, and so when I became a musician, I put a lot of weight on my shoulders. Mm-hmm. So I said to myself, okay, I'm gonna be a musician, but I'm gonna be like a responsible professional, and like I'll make a living out of it properly, and you know, mm-hmm. So I'll be as serious as any other professional.
Right. And not like a starving artist or hobbyist.
Exactly. And so I started seeing myself as a worker of music, you know, and then when I got into music school, like university, that became even heavier because people don't see themselves as, they see themselves as like it's a job, you know, that's mm-hmm. what it is. Mm-hmm. It's a way to make a living. And so at that time, I bought that kind of thinking, and I put this pressure. I have to, you know, keep a family with this profession, so I have to take it seriously, and that meant going into the technical aspects, but not really, you know, letting things flow and listen to yourself and trying to find your unique contribution. So it took many years for me to understand a lot of things. One of them is that what I'm doing is much more than a job, and mm-hmm. and it's about a purpose in life, and it's not about supporting my family, although I have to. It's part of, you know, it's part of what I want to do, and I don't have to, but it's part of what I want to do. But the work is about a purpose in the world, and that I have a unique role to play in this purpose. So I have to be able to look into myself and understand who I am, and you know, my needs and desires, and my unique perspective of reality. Mm-hmm. And so it took me a long time to understand that, and still today, my main challenge to myself is being more irresponsible.
It's a good problem to have.
Because, yeah, when I enter a class, the first thing that comes with me is you have to do a good job. You have to be good. You have to create a good experience for people, and you know, because this is your job and you have to do it well because you chose this. All that shit comes into my mind, and because it's my responsibility that people have a good experience and learn and feel a deep connection and ta-na-na, ta-na-na. And so I started exercising being more irresponsible, because I found out through experience, and luckily I've been able to be with groups like many times. So I found out that when I had fun, that's where things work the best. Mm-hmm. And so when I was really connected to enjoying myself and having fun, everyone tended to enjoy themselves and also to have fun, and the experience would be more powerful. So every time now when I this is kind of my mantra, you know, have fun, enjoy yourself. So that helps me take the weight of responsibility that I've built over so many years, thinking like that. So that's why I've exercised being more and more irresponsible. Because if I have fun, if I enjoy it, I mean, it always works with people. People always have a good time and always, you know, have a deep experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'll say to that, based on my experience of you, having taken many, many, many of your workshops, and co-facilitated with you on a few of them as well, I feel like you have such a gift for, exactly as you said, embodying the spirit of the work in such a way that, you know, the, there's nothing left to do but to mirror it back to you. Like you create such a strong container for joy. Um,
Mhm.
and through that container, precision and musicality more often than not happens.
Mhm. Yeah,
um,
and coming back to your question
mm,
about being an artist,
mm-hmm,
that this when I would experience that place, I would feel like whole, you know, and I would feel whole, and I would feel that this is a way I want to be. This is a way I can be every time, all the time. Because as a musician and as a director, a choir director, there were all these roles I felt I had to play.
mm-hmm,
And it's like I had to be different people in different settings. So I would be the conductor and then the music teacher with the kids, and in my relationship somewhere else. And then I had like the band, like a blues band I performed with, and then I had to be the the singer. And it was a different role for a different persona for every role, and that was so tiring,
mm-hmm,
exhausting. And then like working with groups and having fun, enjoying myself, and experience deep things. It showed me that I could be a whole, like integral. And I remember that very clearly, like the day I found out, oh, so this is what the word integrity means. It means to be the same person, to feel the same person all the time.
mm-hmm,
Of course, you don't talk to your wife as you talk to your grandmother or your boss, or I don't know. There are differences in the way you act when you're relating to different people, but still the feeling inside is the same. And
mm-hmm.
that was a very deep thing for me, and I started to, try to be truthful and be whole, integral every time. And I also found that working with groups, because I would plan my speeches. So when we make this song, I'm gonna make a speech about this element of the song because I felt so inspired about that when I was planning the class. And then when I was at the class, I would say those words, and they wouldn't mean anything. People would look at me and like, okay, they understand, but they wouldn't feel it.
Mm.
So I found out, and then I found out that when I would say things by chance, that was just feeling them, and I would say them,
Mm-hmm.
they would have such a deep impact.
Yep.
And it's kind of obvious, and kind of foolish, but it was a huge revelation for me.
Mm-hmm.
I said, oh, when I say things from my heart that are true, people connect to it. And when I say things that I plan, they don't. Yeah, and so I started to looking for that every time I'm with a group, and I still do that a lot. I try to always like look for, like you say, to embody what I'm doing, and yeah, it's a beautiful way also to find out who you are, and who you want to be.
Mm-hmm. Could you actually say a bit about? So I know that you had a study group for many years with Pedro and Hinaldo and maybe a few other people, and out of that study
Hmm.
group came Futura Livre. Could you talk a bit about that?
Yeah. So what happened is, uh, Barbara has a study group,
Mm-hmm.
had for
Fernanda
many
Barba.
years.
Mm-hmm.
Fernando Barba, yeah, the creator of Barbatukis,
Mm-hmm.
and It was called fritos. Fritos means to fry, because they would fry their brains out. And that started about, I don't know when it started. It was 2005, 2006, I don't know. And Pedro and Ronaldo were both a part of it. And when I met Ronaldo, after a few experiences together, he invited me into this group also to bring the vocal aspect. That was way before Omega, and I was already like searching for alternative ways to do vocal music. And he was aware of that. Actually, through my work with that friend, Paula, he saw this work, and we talked about how voice can be facilitated in different manners, and so he invited me into the group, and I joined in 2008 or 9, and Fritos was a laboratory. That was the amazing thing. It was a place to try out stuff, and both me, Ronaldo, and also Pedro, and also a few other people, especially Cadu, that you may have met in Barba's study group, and Marina Cristal, and Mari Maziero, other people. We would facilitate things that we were trying out. We would experiment things with. They didn't necessarily need it to work. It's just we were trying out things. And I was already working a lot, so I had this lab to test ideas that I could take to other groups and to other places.
And you got together on a weekly basis?
Yeah, we would meet every Tuesday. And so we would practice body percussion and singing, games and activities and dynamics, always improvised. So it was an amazing experience on so many things. Technically, on body percussion, we went very deep into that, working like how to clean the sounds, how to make them sound better, and working different grooves and very challenging polyrhythmic things. Vocally, it was really a lab for me to try out different paths, activities, games, and see what worked better, and also like improvisationally, we would improvise a lot. We would always have like a big improv with lights out every week. So with eyes closed, lights out, and just improv, free improv. We would always do that every week to close the night. And that's also where we started to experience, the deep human connection that comes from that. That was like the place where we started. I mean, of course, we experienced that, all of us, through music since ever, since the first time we listen to music or we make music with people, this feeling of deep connection. But it's very easy to forget about that. So at Fritos, I feel we started experiencing that regularly and going deeper into that. And yeah, so that was very important. So when I went to Omega in 2012 and I discovered all, Bobby's work in the community and what circlesinging was. Although, like, technically we had been circlesinging here, it's a totally different thing to understand the culture and to know the people, and So I came back to Brazil and I knew I had to do something with that, and I had two paths I could do. I could try to create a whole new circlesinging scene. There was nothing called circlesinging here. So I could, start a whole different movement based on my work and circlesinging. Or I could, join beautiful work that was already happening, and I was already a part of it. So like bring circle singing as a stronger contribution to body music.
Mm-hmm.
And initially that was my focus. I would call my work body music and put singing into it. And for a few years, that's what I've tried. That's what I tried.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the three of us tried, me, Ronaldo, and Pedro. And that's where Fritura Livre came from, because I started gathering these people with a few friends.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I was the only one from Fritos, doing this work, starting Fritura.
Mm-hmm.
But still, I wanted it to be connected to Fritos. So I asked them if I could call it, Fritura Livre. So it was connected to Fritos. And
mm-hmm.
yeah. And in the beginning, actually, they hesitated because at Fritos, they were very careful about everything related to the group. They were afraid of, losing control or things losing the value and the care they had.
Mm-hmm.
So they were,
the head and the heart.
But it started to, when Ronaldo came, and he saw what was happening, he talked to everyone else, and he was like, no, guys, we have to be a part of this. There's something very interesting happening. And still, it was in the beginning, so we would have like 8, 12 people on the gatherings. So we made it officially a Fritos thing, and there was a whole debate how much a part of Fritura was.
Mm-hmm.
And then it started to be a big thing, but then Fritos started to get harder. People wouldn't take it as seriously as me, Ronaldo, and Pedro would. Old people that stopped coming, and new people weren't very committed. So eventually we decided to stop it, and instead of focusing the energy on the study group, focus the energy on something else. And then we made an activity to find out what was our desire, and the retreat was what came up.
Wow.
So we started organizing the retreat, and it was the best thing we did, to take this energy elsewhere. And then eventually, the first retreats, we would still call ourselves Fritos, and then eventually we convinced Pedro that it was better for him to be a part of what we were calling Música do Círculo, because that was like my project with Ronaldo, and then we would have Fritos with Pedro, and so we were like, okay, let's do the same thing, the three of us, instead of diverting this energy. And so we decided to call it Música do Círculo, and then I think that was also a very important move for us.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like walking me through the journey of how your work in this collaboration has evolved over the course of all these years, and the feedback loop of going to Omega and seeing how like the work happening, the culture being built around Omega, like paralleled and also was distinct from the work that was happening in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and you kind of bringing those two worlds together.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, that's how I felt, bringing these two worlds together. And eventually, I felt that the word música corporal, that's body music in Brazil, would always be connected to body percussion.
Mm-hmm.
And not only me, like the three of us, eventually we that was actually from the first retreat. We thought, do we want to call it like the body music retreat? And we were like, no, we don't, because if we say body music here in Brazil, people will understand exclusively body percussion,
mm-hmm.
and lots of people will not join because they feel body percussion is hard technically, so they're not gonna join it. So in Brazil, we always call it the circle music retreat. And so the first years, I think it was the circle music retreat abroad, and the body music retreat abroad. And in Brazil, it would be called Retiro de Música Circular. And eventually, we decided to call it the same thing in English and in Portuguese. And that's where like the whole circle music thing started. And we also brought what we call like the values of the circle, and then that's a way for us to bring all the work, all the learnings we had with the pedagogy of cooperation and social groups, and this community of people that don't have anything to do with music, but they share the same spirit. So it's a way for us to also bring all this element that's being so strong in our lives. It's like when we met these communities, these groups of people that were working on cooperation and social change through connection and community building, and we were like, it was an amazing discovery. It's like we were,
and that's specifically referred to as the pedagogy of cooperation.
That's one of the groups working on that direction. So here in São Paulo, we have, like in this scene, there's the pedagogy of cooperation. That's a postgraduate course that is from what they call the cooperation project. There's a group of people that came from cooperative games, and that evolved into the pedagogy of cooperation. And they came actually from like physical, like sports, and that kind of world. Like how do you call this in English? Like gym class?
Gym class, yeah.
Like here we call them physical education teachers.
Yeah, we say both. The gym teachers or physical education.
Yeah. So they were from this world, from the world of sports and games. And then they went into cooperative games, and that gave birth to the pedagogy of cooperation. So it's an interesting way that music and sports connect now.
Exactly.
When we're together.
Yeah, I see the connect. I see it so clearly, like how it was inevitable that your paths would cross.
Yeah, because it's all group work, and so it's very interesting because when we met them, but there are also different movements. There's the Elos Institute that organizes the Warriors Without Weapons program. There's like 70 people from 12 different countries that get together for a month, and they stay isolated for this month, working with communities and bringing like change to these communities in an amazing manner.
Yeah,
like they go to communities. And
someone from Metamorphosis was telling me about that, or that month-long thing. What was that one called again?
It's the Warriors Without Weapons.
Borders Without Weapons.
No, Warriors.
Borders.
Warriors
Without Borders.
Yeah.
Got it.
Warriors Without Weapons. Ronaldo actually participated in this program. He stayed there the whole month. So these are two movements that we're very strongly connected to, and other, sister and brother movements like that. And so it's like we found part of our community that we didn't know, and they found like the music for their community in our work. They found a way to make music that is totally coherent to what they do. And we found like a way to talk and relate and decide things that's totally connected to the way we make music. So it was a beautiful thing, and there's been all this feedback through both these movements. I feel that Americans are more individualistic. There's no doubt about that. So it's a bit harder for them to surrender to the group. And it's also a bit harder for them to connect, like to these connective activities that you have to be very aware of other people all the time, looking at them and seeing what's happening in the whole. That is harder than I expected. It's like there are all these great singers, and but the collective and activities that require this kind of a group connection, they are a bit harder than I expect to. They give people a harder time than I expect. And at the same time, people are more comfortable, much more comfortable, taking the lead or doing things by themselves. In Brazil, people are much more afraid of putting themselves on the spot. They avoid that. As in the U.S., I feel that many people look for that. And in Brazil, they avoid it. It's very hard. I mean, to ask for someone to solo. What I feel is that the beautiful thing is the opportunity to learn with each other.
Yeah.
Like I feel I've learned so much from going to Omega, and I also felt that I also brought a contribution. People learned from me, and that the same thing is valid to our cultures. We here in Brazil, we obviously have a lot to learn with Americans and with American culture, and with the U.S. as a nation. We do have a lot to learn if we look at social justice, if we look at violence. I know you guys feel it's bad over there, but there's no comparison.
Yeah.
So we have a lot to grow in that aspect. Of course, there are the circumstances and the historical aspects that make some things very hard for us here in Brazil, but still. And also, I feel Brazil has a lot to teach to the U.S. As I think we're more I don't know, communal. We tend to be a little more open to each other. Very naturally open to other people and emotionally more open to other people. So it's the need for self-protection is not that big. I feel a lot of need for self-protection. And when I'm in America, people feel the need to preserve themselves and take care of themselves, which is a beautiful thing. And it has beautiful reasons for that. But it's different. Here in Brazil, it's easier to create an environment where people feel safe.
You are, I would say, the first, the first person, the first facilitator I've met who really engages facilitation as an art form in itself. And it's interesting because, I've never experienced you fronting your blues band, performing in that very traditional context, in that very traditional way, or leading a traditional choir. I've only experienced you in this edgy realm of having these bodies moving in space in real time. I don't know if I shared that sentence of mine with you that I love so much, the way I described you as he's a guy who does improvisatory rituals of polyphonic movement and sound, some really fancy sentence. And I experience it as a shamanistic ritual. I experience you as this musical shaman, which to me is this whole other realm that for me the word performance is too small to capture what it is that you do. When I try to describe you to friends, he gets people together and we have this spiritual experience that's not necessarily spiritual in the way that you usually think of it, but it's when you're in it, you feel it, you feel the spirit. So now my question for you is, okay, as far as the traditional choir, traditional performance, is that are those realms that still inform your practice? Are they realms that you're still within, or is it more like you're building this world over here, or you're grounded in this world of like integrating different aspects of like music, group facilitation, music and body movement, body music, etc., etc.
Mm. You know, certainly, I was doing other stuff, working with traditional choirs, and I had the blues band. And
Mm-hmm.
when I went to Omega for the first time, and I was also doing something like I do now with the teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went to Omega, it was a huge investment for me, and it was the first time I traveled outside of Brazil since Jamaica. That was like 15 years, 12 years, I don't remember.
Oh, wow.
And you know, it was a lot of money, and at that time I still had that thinking of, oh, I have to support my family, so I can't really waste money on something unless it's going to pay off professionally. It's stupid thinking, very stupid thinking. And I, you know, and I allowed to invest on myself and on what my heart said. And when I was going, I asked myself, what is it that you're feeding? What of the projects that you do, which one you're feeding? And it wasn't the blues band, it wasn't the choral director, it was my work with these kids. Because I was in love with them. You know, we were in love with each other. It was beautiful. We would have such an amazing time together, and this is work that I had done for many years, but I had stopped doing it because it's very disheartening, you know, to see how government and companies that support these projects, how they don't really care about it. So they take funding off like from overnight, and then all those kids and teenagers that are like your family, you don't see them anymore, and no one really cares about them. And so, you know, I was frustrated so many times that I had kind of given up. So I had this opportunity to work with these kids after a few years not doing that kind of work. And I said, okay, I'll give it a try. It's close to where I live. And then it was amazing. And when I went to Omega, I was doing it like for me, of course, but the project that would most benefit was those kids. And I let my heart guide me on that, you know, and not my mind. Because if I let my mind guide me, I might have gone in a different direction because it wasn't the most prestigious work. But my heart said, you know, go do that. That's going to help you with the kids, and it's going to help you with yourself. And when I came back, it became clear to me that was my thing. That what we experienced at Omega, and that I had been experiencing it myself before, that was my thing. You know, and then I found like a whole lot of people that felt it was their thing too, and so when I came back, so when I came back, I started focusing more on that, and so that's today. I feel pretty sure that this is my place, working with groups and in this improvisational manner, and with the movement and the connection and the singing and the spirit. That's my place. And that's a place I want to be in and go deeper into. But I still have desires and ambitions in I'm not sure if it's the traditional performance setting, but in performance settings. Yeah, for sure. And also, but mainly in my own singing work, you know. So, like I've gone back into having my singing classes, and I have this amazing teacher. It's been really amazing, and I've been working again on this aspect. It's a very important aspect of my life, because it really feeds also the work I do with groups. It really feeds it. So I need to be connected to music as we know it, like to song and to performance. This connection really feeds the work I do. But I also need to be connected to nonviolent communication and this perspective of the world. We're more cooperative. All that also feeds me a lot. But I think I'm different than Pedro and Ronaldo. As in
your collaborators, longtime collaborators.
Yeah, because both of them they would be okay not working with music. They are very interested in facilitating by itself without music.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, for example, Pedro right now is actually more interested in facilitating nonviolent communication groups than in facilitating musical practices.
Okay.
He's openly more interested in that. He tells us that. And Ronaldo, I would say, is equally interested in both. And myself, although I am interested in facilitating non-musical processes, for me, clearly, the music making is what makes my heart. What takes us to that special place, what brings the spirit. Music is my favorite way and the most efficient way I know how to work with of bringing the spirit to life.